Good morning, if it is morning where you are at. I'm Gray from World Builders, and this is 11s. It is the special little thing we do when we do fundraisers, and it is Geeks Doing Good season. We have a great set of merchandise and rare things. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and maybe occasionally have a subtle product placement here and there put in. But yeah, while that's going on, you can all go to the thing that's going to be in the chat here, the link in there. But if you're listening to this, it's igg.me/@/GDG21. It's a lot more intuitive when you type it than when you say it. And I'm really happy to have as my guest today, Mary Robinette Kowal. And I have if it's okay with you, Mary Robinette, I'm going to read your 50-word bio, but then I'm going to add in just a couple of words from your other one.
Okay.
So in case you just came out of the biodome after 15 years or so being inside and don't know who she is, Mary Robinette is the author of Ghost Talkers, the Glamorous History series, and the Lady Astronaut series. She is currently the president of SFWA, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, part of the award-winning podcast Writing Excuses, and a 4-time Hugo Award winner. Her short fiction appears in Uncanny, Tor.com, and Asimov's. Mary Robinette is a professional puppeteer, lives in Nashville, and you can always find her online at maryrobinettekowal.com. And I just want to add in a few others that after you say 4-time Hugo Award winner, you can also say Nebula and Locus Awards, the Astounding Award for Best New Writers. And scrolling down here, there's that puppeteering. Yeah, the 2 UNIMA USA Citations of Excellence, the highest award that an American puppeteer can receive. So I just have to say, it is really unfair of you to be winning 4 Hugos, Nebula, and what was the other one? The
Astounding
and Locus Locus. And it's your side gig. I mean,
well, so it was my side gig. And there's a couple of things that I want to clarify. One is that I'm currently the president of SFWA for 6 more days. Actually, I think it's 5 days. No, 5 days, 12 hours. And no, I'm wrong. It's 5 days, 11 hours, and 51 minutes.
But who's
no one is counting that. And my successor, Jeffy Kennedy, I'm very excited about what she's got planned for the organization. So while we are live in this moment, yes, president of SFWA, but I see a future before me with hours free from meetings. But yeah, when I started, it was definitely the side gig. There was a long period of time where the two things ran in parallel. But over the last year, strangely, there have been fewer opportunities for puppetry than one might expect. Weird. I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, it's all writing or all meetings all the time.
I'm always curious, especially in situations like this, like what was the trigger? I mean, I get the impression like reading your bio, you were in performing arts, and after the Little Shop puppet you saw, you went into puppetry and stuff like that. But at some point you said, you know what, I feel like I'm going to write a book or a story. Like, what was the instigating moment that did that?
So there's 2 different things. One is that I was that kid who wanted to do everything. So one of my early memories is writing a story and illustrating it and binding it in construction paper for my mom for her Mother's Day present. And I'm probably kindergarten at this point, because I remember, you remember the letter, the paper with the really big.
Yep.
Yeah. So writing it on that, there's an image from that that I actually reused in a novella that I wrote with Brandon Sanderson, because it was still in my head from when I was like kindergartner. For those who have listened to the original, it's the iris, and for those who haven't, don't worry about it. And so on the one hand, always have written. The other side of it is that I did at a certain point go into puppetry, and then made the change. So the first novel I wrote, I started in high school, and it took me like 10 years to write it. It will never be published, and that is a good thing. It starred my D&D character, and as they do, and the plot was a combination of the 80s Battlestar Galactica and A-Team, but not the good parts.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this, but you have a whole bunch of people now that are being like, I want to read that.
No, they don't. But again, there are pieces of it where the writing didn't suck. And there were parts of the writing that were actually, like, I looked back on later and I was like, oh, this piece is actually good. And the rest of it was, and plot, what was that? But I wound up repurposing part of that for a story called The Bound Man, which was one of my first sales. So basically what happened that got me back into writing was a severe puppet injury that caused me to take about 2 years off. And during that time, I realized that I had been getting my creative jollies through puppetry. My brother was in China with his kids, and it was at a time before Skype was really stable. So I used to read bedtime stories to them, and this was a way to still connect. I started sending them a serial, and then got about 5 chapters into it and was like, I think I have something here. I should maybe try to plot this and think about it. Wound up writing a novel. And was, like, I'd grown up in the arts. My mom's an arts administrator. I'd been working in the arts. So the instinct that I have now is, how do you monetize this? But basically that people can get paid for things that they enjoy. And, just because you enjoy something doesn't mean that you shouldn't get paid for it, or that there's not a way to make a living at it. And my entire career has been trying to be able to turn down the gigs I don't want to do. So it was like, well, this is another gig I want to do. How do I do that? That led me to taking workshops and submitting stories, and now here I am.
I was going to say, and now you're giving workshops, actually.
Yeah.
I actually got to attend your workshop at the Joko Cruise, the last one that they had, and found it very, very valuable, which is probably why I haven't actually published the story that I was thinking of at the time. But sometimes knowing what not to do is very helpful.
Right. It gives you tools to figure out how to revise.
And one of our chat members just recently said, it's so weird to hear your voice outside of writing excuses.
Right. Here's a face and it's moving. It's even stranger when I'm in 3D.
Yeah, we were one of the t-shirts we didn't put out, but we thought might be appropriate for coming out of COVID was, whoa, torsos.
I had this realization about thinking about the Spanish flu and then the Roaring '20s. It's like, oh, now I totally understand that, coming out of the 1918 and then going into the 1920s, why everyone is suddenly like, let's party, and why also the hemlines rose, because the Victorians were like, no one can see us on a Zoom call. Why do we need those long dresses?
And because we talked earlier about this and I wanted to do it, poor. All my life, I've always been poor. I keep asking God what I'm for, and he tells me, gee, I'm not sure. Sweep that floor. So tell me about Little Shop. Tell me a Little Shop story. People are really interested in the puppeteering stuff too, especially.
So Little Shop of Horrors is my favorite musical. I have been in 7 different productions of it.
Wow.
Yes, I have gotten to use the original off-Broadway puppets built by Martin Robinson, who's a dear friend of mine, and the severe puppet injury was a Little Shop injury.
I was gonna say severe puppet injury is also a great name for a band. So
right? Yeah, that's a punk band just waiting to happen.
right.
I think if Scalzi doesn't use it, I will. Yeah, so people may have heard me tell this story before, but we were doing Little Shop. It was a 3-month run in a dinner theater, Sylvia's Class Act dinner theater, and the stage was like the size of a postage stamp. And these puppets are big, and this was actually a set that I built. So the biggest one was light, as such things go. It was only 80 pounds.
Ooh.
The off-Broadway ones were 125. So anyway, it's the weekend before we close. It's been just this very clean run, and we go to do, we're right at the tail end, and there's this very simple stunt where I pick the puppet up, snap at Seymour, and then set it down again, and he punches it. And he punched it while it was still in the air. So the puppet shears to the side, and I tried to control it. And the lower jaw is controlled with a rope, essentially, a big strap. So it can control a lot of things, but a yaw is not one of the things that it's going to control. And that's one bar on the top. And so I try to control it, and something in my wrist went, and I knew immediately that was very wrong. But I'd done the show so many times by this point that I also knew all of the alternate ways that I could hold the puppet. Mm-hmm. And weirdly, the fact that I have done 7 different productions and with some really bad puppets, prepared me for this. Like one puppet that I was performing in, that upper bar came out while I was performing. Ooh. And so I just had to grab something else to keep going while I had a piece of metal with screws, broken piece of metal with screws, flailing around inside the head with me. It was great. Good fun. So anyway, so I finished the show. Immediately, ice it, we get ace bandage, wrap the wrist, anti-inflammatories, elevated. It's a 2-show day. I had internalized the show must go on, and it wasn't swelling up. So I was just like, I'm just going to baby it. I'll do all the modification movements that I did the first time. The other puppets, there are a couple of them that I can do left-handed. So I'll do all of that. Did the second show. I knew that I had Monday and Tuesday off. I wasn't going to have to be back till Wednesday. Babied my wrist, came in Wednesday night, and immediately knew that I had done something very wrong because I could not roll my hand over. And then it got misdiagnosed. They thought it was a cyst. So put me in physical therapy, and I wound up re-tearing it every day for about a month and a half, which put me in a cast to immobilize it for almost a year. And then another close to another year of rehabilitation.
What a nightmare!
Severe puppet injury.
Yeah. No, I mean, there was a time that I made a good portion of my living playing music for preschoolers, and at the same time I was involved in the SCA and wanted to get into the heavy fighting, beat people with sticks and armor. And I asked somebody how I could prevent having a broken finger, because I couldn't afford one. I made my living that way. And he's like, oh no, it's not a question of if you'll get a broken finger. It's a question of when. When? Hey, look, archery. That's
right.
And for you, it was hey, look, writing. I mean, you got to focus on that then? Yeah,
basically, because there were actually a lot of ways that I could perform left-handed. I had a number of things that I was already booked for that I had to do. So I modified the puppets, and fortunately for lip sync, I'm ambidextrous, so was looking was working left-handed, but building, I couldn't build. And that actually turns out to be the thing that was important for getting me over to writing, because designing and building use exactly the same parts of my brain that writing do. And it doesn't, like, on the surface, it's like, but those are two completely different skill sets, but they're both about world building and character creation, and figuring out what the story is, what that narrative is. Performing was embodying a character, but it wasn't answering questions every day. It was emoting, right? So what I've discovered is that I can perform and write with no problems, but creating new puppets and writing, whichever one I'm doing, the other one just drops.
Right.
My drive to do it just drops. So not being able to build, because I couldn't get my hand, it was in a clamshell cast, I couldn't get it into spaces. My dexterity left-handed with a drill is, and definitely like chiseling left-handed, that was just like, or any kind of carving, like that's a no-go.
It's funny. I want to create a week-long retreat where you build a puppet and write a book, with Robinette. That sounds like that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I got to take a puppetry and poetry workshop.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was so good. I had been really interested in poetry, and someone was Manual Cinema, which is a theater company, puppet theater company that I really admire, was participating in this. And so they had several different poets come in over the course of the week, each teaching us different techniques. And our groups wrote poems and then created a show to go with the poem. It was fantastic.
Oh, somebody just asked if your name is a play on marionette. We're talking about, but no, that's the real name here.
Yep. No, but I do believe that was definitely a consideration at one point. But no, I'm named after both grandmothers.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Mary Lois and Virginia Robinette.
I was almost named Clarabelle Rose for the exact same reason.
Pretty name.
Yes, that is the real name. Now that I know how much you like that idea of puppetry, I'm thinking of all the pictures I've seen of you playing around with spacesuits and things like that, and it seems like that's a spacesuit is basically a version of a puppet. It's a full body puppet kind of thing.
Hello. Now we're going to get into semantics. Are you sure you want to go that way? I mean, so it's interesting because yes, and also very no. The difference between when you're talking about a body puppet, which is a puppet that you put your entire
Big
body
Bird
inside.
or something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Big Bird, Snuffy, Audrey too.
Right.
Is a single word, and that word is displacement. So in a costume, all of the body parts line up perfectly with the costume's body parts. But in a puppet, there's something that's displaced. Like in Big Bird, it's the arm that's over the head working the mouth. In Audrey 2, everything is displaced because it's a giant man-eating plant. Sometimes, like I was Sandy the dog in a production of Annie, and that it was a summer stock theater, and a human actor using a body puppet is significantly easier to train than a dog.
I mean, in some cases, it depends on the actor, but yeah.
That's true. But the puppet had mechs even though my hands were more or less where the front legs were, my back legs, even though all of that lined up, my hands had controls that worked ears. So there was some displacement. So it's about having that displacement. So in a spacesuit, there's no displacement. Everything lines up perfectly.
Okay. Gotcha.
And at the same time, you are also onto something, because when I got to go to the NBL, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, or anytime I watch a spacewalk and see astronauts coming out of the spacesuits, the thing that struck me the first time that I got to see this was that they stretched their hands when they came out the same ways that I would when I've been using a puppet where the mech is too stiff.
Mm-hmm.
And they do the same warm-up exercises for their shoulders that I do for puppetry, because the spacesuits are just really, really evil to your shoulders. And, a spacewalk, the only thing that you're not doing on a spacewalk is actually walking. It's all hands. Your legs just...
How do you feel about the the impending commercialization of spaceflight, and Jeff Bezos and his brother going up? And I mean, are you in favor? Are you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very pro commercial spaceflight, and as far as Jeff Bezos and his brother going up, I'm like, he spent his money to build this program. It would, like, I'm like, yeah, I would go up too if I could afford it.
Yeah.
And, going up on the first mission makes sense, because really all that's doing is testing to make sure that the thing can go up and come back down. Going up on a later mission is much more indulgent, because at that point you're sending
stuff comes later. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, yeah, no, that makes, like, that's reasonable. As such things go for being a multi-million-dollar owner of a company that's abusive of its employees. But besides that,
Jamie just mentioned in the chat that she hopes he experiences that astronaut perspective thing.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, it might be a case of looking at it and he looks at it and goes, mine.
Yeah.
That. So it seems like I have to apologize. I am more familiar with your Lady Astronaut series than your other books, but I'm guessing from the titles that they're relatively different. Like, they're not all about spaceflight, and that. What made you go, decide to write the books about the Lady Astronaut universe? And is that your most successful intellectual property kind of thing? Like, are you happy about that? Are you, I mean, aside from just yay, I said I'm doing it, but
yeah. So I had written a novella called The Lady Astronaut of Mars, which won one of the 4 Hugos. And the backstory of the character was very interesting to me, and I wanted to explore that more. Simultaneously, and this is to your question about financially successful, one of the things about being a traditionally published author and someone who is working in the stream of commerce is that you are making decisions about commercial viability, as much as you are also making decisions about, I just want to write this thing. You don't have to, but I do. Again, coming out of a long career in the arts, I've found that there are always ways to make things that you can sell, but that you are also internally satisfied with. So my editor pointed out to me that the things that I got nominated for and the things that I won were all for science fiction. And we thought that exploring more of the Lady Astronaut universe would make sense. I had always wanted to write all over the map. So, which is why my short fiction was frequently science fiction, because I was writing fantasy at the beginning. And like, I just want to explore. So, so with the novels, I had been slowly edging up the time period in which I was writing. So the glamorous histories are set in 1814 through 1819. Ghost Talkers is World War I, and Lady Astronaut is 1950s. So I'd been slowly trying to get my readers accustomed to the fact that it's not always going to be corsets and bonnets.
You definitely did a great job of that. I have so many questions I want to ask you, and I'm thinking, oh no, again, commercial viability. I keep sipping out of these great Lady Astronaut mug, of which there are a set of 3 that we happen to be offering. Oh, did I mention we have a fundraiser going on? And you have been kind enough to let us sell the set of 3 that are out
And
right
I'm
now.
also going to mention that you also have these mission patches, which I literally use as a coaster.
And we have a cardigan, which I don't have a picture handy, but you can see it on the site. Unusual Frequencies is the designer of that, who worked with you, and it is amazing. I'm sad that we got to have it in-house for so short a time, just long enough to take pictures, and then we shipped it off to Elizabeth to have her take a look at things. But can you tell me about that whole, the way that the Lady Astronaut Club and the different members like kind of took on this embodiment in reality outside of your books?
Yeah, it's been one of the most joyful things. So in the books, there's a little girls start a Lady Astronaut Club, and it was inspired by Mr. Wizard, because he had a Mr. Wizard Club, and so I was inspired by that, put that into the book. And then when I was looking for promotional stuff, I was like, it'd be fun to have a Lady Astronaut Club card. And so designed that, which involved designing the logo. If you hold up the one with the red head.
They're all wearing, oh, there we go.
Yes. So that's Nicole. And that was the first logo. And I was like, but if you have a membership card, it should get you membership to something. And not everyone's going to be able to come to a live event. And you get cooler swag if you show me your membership card at a live event. But I set up a Slack, and it has become just this wonderful community. So basically, you send away a self-addressed stamped envelope to an actual PO box, and you get a physical letter back in the mail with a membership card and the password to the Lady Astronaut Club. We have daily. Do you have your? Yeah.
I have the wrong bag with me, but on my satchel, I have the patch on there as well as I got buttons from you on the joke.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So you get these things, and so we have daily co-working sessions. There's crafting night. It is. I call it the kindest corner of the internet, because one of the things that we try to do is to embody and train ourselves to be kind, which and being kind is not the same as being nice.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure.
Because I don't want to assume I understand it. I think I understand it, but.
So nice. Jane Austen complained about how people used nice all the time. That was the slang word that people were using in her day. And it originally just meant tidy, just clean, tidy, neat. So people were saying that's nice the way we would say that's neat. And it kind of stuck. And now when someone is nice, what it means is it's still that they would prefer for things to be tidy. So they do all of the socially acceptable forms. They don't want to rock the boat. And I say this as someone who has definitely been the nice lady. But niceness does not take emotional energy. Frequently, Frequently, niceness is about trying to avoid needing to spend emotional energy.
Going along with social norms kind of thing.
Yeah. Kindness can involve listening to people. Kindness can involve changing your own choices in order to lift up and make space for other people. Kindness can involve setting boundaries for yourself so that you are not causing other people to do emotional labor because you've overextended.
All of my staff are going, yeah, Gray, learn to be more kind there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That is some deep thoughts. I'm gonna redirect a little bit and ask a question that you can feel free to not answer.
Yeah. Are you redirecting because you were in this picture and do not like it?
Yeah. No, more like, if we go down that road much further, we'll take up all the rest of our time, and there's at least two other things I need to ask you about. So it definitely deserves more time, though. So hopefully we can have you back at some point. And this is the question you can feel free not to answer. It is it is relevant to the lady astronaut, but it's also a bit of personal curiosity. And just feel free to say no comment. When I saw the trailer for the Apple original For All Mankind, I immediately went to the credits and looked for your name because it felt like you must have been a consultant or the driving force behind it. And when I didn't find your name, I said, I'm not going to watch this, because I felt like, if they were going to make a movie that was similar to that idea of space exploration in the 60s, an alternate universe, they should use yours. Do you have any feelings either way about that show? Or
I haven't seen it because I don't have Apple. What I've heard is that it's good. I've heard that it's worth watching. The thing for me when I look at it that I feel is quite different from mine is that it's the same thing. It's still a jingoist. It's a change about who is out there on the frontier, but it's still the space race. So it's still the same basic story, but surfacing
enough to have an asteroid. So yeah,
right. And mine is about the entire planet coming together, and those are different stories at their heart.
I'm just saying, I wish yours had been told first, because I was very excited when I first saw the trailers. I'm like, oh, they must have finally, gotten that. No, they didn't.
I'll tell you the one that made me more go, and that's Away. Which is,
I don't know that I've seen that one.
So I think that's Amazon Prime. Anyway, it's.
Wait, yes, I do. I think I did see that on there.
It's the Mars mission.
Mm-hmm.
And right. And the main character's name is Emma. My main character is Elma. And she has to make a decision at the beginning of the story about whether or not to go on the Mars mission because her husband is quite ill, and her husband is the lead engineer for NASA. Right. My character's husband is the lead engineer of NASA, and she has to make a decision at the beginning of Lady Astronaut of Mars about whether or not to go while her husband is very ill. And all of that, I was like, boy, these are some weird coincidences. And then one of the characters is a puppeteer. And I'm and what I honestly, it is not the same story, but honestly, what I feel like is someone read Lady Astronaut of Mars and my bio and like this, and then was inspired by this. Like, and that the puppetry thing came in kind of as an homage to that. I have no idea. But that was the one where I was like, hold on for a second. Yeah. All of the emotional beats in that and the acting is so good. All of the science is so bad. They, at one point, and this is the thing I rant about every chance I get, is at one point they fix a broken solar panel that is on the outside of the spacecraft with a pickaxe.
What?
Yes. Why do they have a pickaxe in space? I mean,
a good question. I'm trying to figure out how you would. I mean, that should have been my first question. My first question was, how would that fix? I mean, it might fix it.
They were
I'll
using
fix
it to
you,
pry a
but-
cable and put the cable back into it's nothing about it makes sense.
Yeah, the chat says, to mine asteroids, of course.
Right. Yes.
He was in the loot
Yes.
chest around the corner. Yeah, exactly. So the other question that I really wanted to ask you about is just, now that you are at the end of your August term as president of SFWA, which also, where's the other F?
Science hyphen fiction, fantasy.
Oh, is that what it is? So science fiction is hyphenated. Okay.
That is my headcanon for it.
Okay.
Um,
Because that has been bugging me every time I type it. But
also, it's of America, although there is a plan in works to change it to association to be more inclusive.
okay.
But currently, it is still of America and not association.
Thank you for that correction. You reached the end of your term as president. How long has it been?
2 years.
2 years.
Or
So,
all eternity, depending on.
What do you wish you had known before you went in that you know now?
Um, I wish all of the challenges were around the pandemic, honestly. I am the only president in SFWA's history to have never presided over a live in-person nebulas, even though we had 2 Nebula conferences. We put together funding to give relief to members who had been negatively impacted by COVID, whether that was, and we had 2 different sources. If they had medical expenses, they could go to us, or if they had non-medical expenses, like, hello, I've lost my job, or my insurance premiums jumped, or, housing, whatever it was, that was a side effect. I was going to do this anthology and it fell through so we got put funding together to help members do that. And then a lot of last year was spent figuring out, like, we had to pivot very, very fast because our conference is in May. And so getting our virtual conference off the ground last year was a big, big lift. And then figuring out how to maintain that over the course of the year was continual lift. So a lot of the things, it's not so much that what I wish I had known, it's that there were things that I didn't get to do because we were spending our energy, with this unanticipated global change. So there were we started the work on doing some organizational restructuring, and we got that done in the publications department. We had wanted to go through and do that in the other branches of the organization, and all we really had time to do was define it. But putting all of the other things into place, there was just, I was in office for 2 years.
Yeah,
we did a lot of lifting.
Yeah, I would imagine. One of the things that at the beginning of the pandemic, we were considering having more remote work and having, I shouldn't say at the beginning, before the pandemic, World Builders was considering having more remote work, having outside, people working from outside of Stevens Point. And then the pandemic hit, and it's like, well, obviously, this is just going to happen. If you don't have to be in the warehouse, don't be. And if you are in the warehouse, try not to be. So we've actually come out of it with a deeper resilience, I guess. Mm-hmm. Now that we're able to be back in here or work at home, it opens up possibilities. Did SFWA experience the same thing? I mean, it feels like the nebulas being virtual might have almost increased attendance in some extent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, it definitely increased the accessibility of the organization, and gave us tools that we've wanted for years. One of the ones that Kat Rambo had been working on was she was trying to get more educational content and more outreach for the organization, and we just didn't have the tools and the resources. And to do the Nebula Conference, we had to build an online platform. We had to create all of these different resources. So now the Nebula Conference, rather than being this one weekend a year, it's a year-round experience. So every weekend there are writing dates with a different guest instructor. Kate Elliott runs a world building workshop. We're getting ready to do a series that is centering Asian American and Pacific Islander creators.
Great. And we have Nevo on tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
And if you sign up for the Nebula Conference, you get access to all of that for the entire year, as well as the Slack channels for community and parties, social events, mixers, and that kind of thing. And what it allowed us to do, we had also, in addition to wanting this educational thing, we'd wanted some form of student membership, where you didn't have to be an established writer to join, so that we could help people when they're in the early part of their career, when they're at the most vulnerable. And this allows us to do that because we don't have to have membership criteria for the Nebula Conference, but you still get access to the SFWA resources, to a lot of them. So that's been, as you say, a wonderful, resilient thing. We were already remote working, right, because the board of directors is spread all over the place. But it's been. I'm very excited about the tools that we have now. And next year, the conference, I'm not going to be involved, but or rather, it's not going to be my circus, but I may still have some monkeys there. I guess what I should say is it won't be my circus or my monkeys, but I did set up some of the tent poles for next year, and Jeffy is on board with everyone was on board with this idea that we basically think of the Nebulas as a year-round digital conference, online conference, that once a year has an in-person extension that also has a digital, right, so that so it's as hybrid as we can make it, because it is more accessible. There are people who can come because they were far away. There are people who can come because they have a mobility disorder. There are people who can come because they have they don't have the funds to come in person, or can't afford the time. So I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping that, what I'd really love to see is the kind of representatives from multiple different conventions sitting down and all saying, okay, let's talk about what tools we have, and let's all pool our resources to come up with a way to do this hybrid thing, because it's better for all of us.
We learned a whole lot from the FIACon, and
yeah.
Unfortunately, my poster got a little tear in it, but yeah, that was the success of their thing was definitely helped us out.
So this is a great example of how things should work. So FIACon saw the nebulas happen. We shared all of our knowledge with them. They expanded and built a bigger, more beautiful thing. Then they shared their knowledge with you. And then we hired LD Lewis, who ran FIACon, to come back and run the nebulas. And she put in all of the things, the lessons that she had learned and the new processes, and made this year's nebulas so much better. And it's that's the way things should happen. Right. Conversely, we also shared our our knowledge with another conference that I won't name, but I have 4 awards from, and they did
Nice
not,
flex. That was beautiful.
they did not use any of the information we gave them last year, as far as we can tell, about how to run an online award show. And that's like,
I mean, that was a contribution too, because I can tell you that when we started talking about the end of year, I said the one thing we need to make sure is not to be that con. So
yeah, it's like, but it is all about, I think, the way you raise up a community is that you share knowledge. You know, rising tide raises all boats. There's a reason that aphorism is around. So, you know, doing what we can. One of my my creative partner in puppetry said that he always felt like if you climbed a ladder, the first thing you should do is pull someone up after you.
Yeah, I like that idea. The other way that I look at that, you know, as someone in a very privileged position, is that I need to make sure that whatever space I occupy is more comfortable for those who don't have the same privileges that I have. So that's the version of that, the stewardship side of things.
Yeah.
We are almost out of time. Do you want to talk about anything else related to SFWA, or should we just go right into plugging all the cool stuff at the thing?
You had questions about Disney Must Pay.
I do, but I don't want to push that. But yeah, I mean, my understanding of Disney Must Pay was basically that as the Disney Corporation takes over more and more intellectual properties and contracts, they looked at the contracts and said, oh, great, this contract gives us the right to publish things. Oh, there's a little thing in here that says we're supposed to pay royalties. We'll just ignore that part. That's not a terrible summary. Yeah, it started just with one author, Alan Dean Foster, who wrote the first Star Wars novelization. Through the Mind's Eye. I had my paperback. Yep.
And he wasn't getting paid royalties, and wasn't getting paid royalties. It actually started with Alien, and then we realized that Disney also had the Star Wars thing. It took us a long time to figure out who owned the rights. His agent had been working on it for quite a while before they came to SFWA, and we're so grateful to Alan for deciding to go public, because we were pretty sure that if it was happening to him, it was happening to other people. We now know of around 20 authors, over 80 titles that that are all in the same model. The thing that is very distressing currently is it looks really appears that they're treating comic writers differently than they are novelists, and not in good ways. We have gotten novelists paid. We have yet to see any of the comic writers get money. And the reason that they're citing is that the contract was with another company and they have the right to publish this, but they don't have any obligation to pay the royalties. It's the same argument that they were making previously, which in the words of a contract lawyer that we spoke with was, and I will quote, bullshit.
It definitely feels like bullshit. When I read it, I'm like, who thought this was a good thing?
Yeah.
But I have to say that, I appreciate that you're fighting that fight and doing that work. Just as a person who, grew up with Alan Dean Foster's books, and when I saw that he was the first one and read about those things happening, I was like, don't treat him like that. That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, it's extremely upsetting. And when I leave office, I am going to continue on the. We put together a task force across multiple author organizations that is trying to stay on top of this and encourage Disney to do the right thing. So I'm going to stay on that task force afterwards, and I'm really looking forward to being able to explain that, now that I'm not in office, that my term has come to an end, that I'll be able to devote my full attention to the Disney task force.
Oh man, I like the evil gleam in your eye for that, as you say that. And just to bring it full circle, watch this segue. That kind of work that you do there is also helped out by the SFWA is a nonprofit organization, and they recently had a fundraiser auction to raise money to help support them. And guess who was on the back end of that? Yes, that's right. It was us here at World Builders. We really enjoyed working with you and your staff during that time. And one of the things we were able to do, we are privileged to be able to make this 100% pass through. So all the money that we raised is going right into your coffers because we get the help of people, authors like you, who license things like this. And that's why we are, for the one time in the year, running a capacity fundraiser. This particular fundraiser is going to be 100% pass through us. That's an unfortunate metaphor. It's going to be this is the fundraiser that helps us keep the lights on, helps us pay the wonderful staff that does things like this beautiful Zoom and Twitch background, pays for my exorbitant office here with the cinder blocks, and enables us to keep on doing things like helping out SFWA, Heifer International, Project Hope. We are always looking to find a way to live up to the idea of geeks doing good. And so please, if you're watching this, I know a lot of people that are watching this have already gone beyond their credit card's abilities to try and get the cool stuff, because we're very cruel and we keep releasing new awesome things each day. So the answer to that is you need to spread the word to other people and tell them that they need to get you things for your future birthday, Christmas, holiday gift extravaganza in the future. So please do spread the word. If you can't afford to buy anything, 100% understand. Spreading the word helps out a whole lot. And the more people that we tell about World Builders, both our fundraiser and our store at worldbuildersmarket.com, the more we can keep doing this kind of work. So here endeth the spiel.
And I'm just going to add on to that the reason I'm here is because I believe in the work that you all are doing. You are geeks doing good. It's incredibly heartening to see. And we are happy. The partnership was incredibly useful. And we are deeply, deeply grateful for it. Again, an example of learning from others and sharing knowledge makes everything better.
100% agree. Well, thank you so much, Mary Robinette. You can find all kinds of information on maryrobinettekowal.com. I'm going to eventually internalize the prayer pronunciation. Is there anywhere else you'd like to point people at? To find
there are links. maryrobinettekowal.com is great. If you want to take classes from me, I teach them on my Patreon. And in addition to the mugs that you can get from World Builders, you can get different mugs from my Patreon. But the ones that for World Builders are exclusive to World Builders.
Thank you so much for that too. Yes. Great. Well, we are going to go ahead and do the sign off. Mary Robinette, we tend to, in order to make sure that the stream is catching up, we started out using a phrase which was the Latin phrase dum vivamus vivamus, which while we live, let us live. But it got shortened to vivamus, but then that got too predictable. So we always have a variation of vivamus based on the theme of things. And so I'm going to give the sign-off word, which the people in chat, when they hear it and repeat it, it will come out. And today's word is Moostronaut.
Man, fitting a helmet around those
Yeah.
antlers would be a challenge.
I mean, could you just have a seal and let the antlers be in space? Yeah.
No, because those are living, right? They've got velvet on the outside of them, and
true.
Yeah, no, and they would, and they're partly there to help with thermal conductivity, so and heat distribution. So no, you'd absolutely have to have them encased. Yeah, boy, that's a
put a puzzle in your head, huh?
Yeah, no, I'm like, I think it would have to be a front seal and a back seal, like a clamshell thing, probably hinging from above.